over the weekend, 60 Minutes went after the sovereign citizen movement, something that most Americans have never even heard of. And 60 Minutes, well, actually, they went after Alfred Adask, if I'm pronouncing his name right, specifically. And so he's with us here today. Alfred Adask, a constitutionalist and sovereign citizen, a blogger, radio host, American Independence Hour, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 10 to 11 p.m. Central Time, apparently, and on WWCR shortwave, etc. You can find the website is theamericanvoice.com and adask.wordpress.com. Alfred, welcome to the program.
Hello, Tom. How are you?
I am fine, thank you very much. Let me play just this short piece of this clip from 60 Minutes, and I'd love to hear your response to it, if that's all right with you.
I'd be surprised if you didn't.
Okay, here it is.
Alfred Adask told us he's never advocated violence, yet listen to what he said on his internet radio show.
We do not have the right to keep and bear arms so we can go duck hunting. We have the right to keep and bear arms in order to shoot our own politicians. We have the right.
You said we have the right to keep and bear arms in order to shoot our own politicians. We have the right to keep and bear arms.
Actually,
to
Jake,
shoot
if you
the
can stop the clip at that point. It's because 60 Minutes just kind of drags it out and pounds it on the head. Are you?
Tell me about it.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you about that. First of all, I am hoping that you've read the debates in the Constitutional Convention in the notes of James Madison and in the Federalist Papers about why and how the Second Amendment came about, and that it was based on the Constitution of Pennsylvania, and that the Constitution of Pennsylvania, Article 13, I'm reading it right here, said that the people shall have the right to bear arms for the defense of themselves and the state, and as standing armies in time of peace are dangerous to liberty, they ought not to be kept up, and that the military should be kept under strict subordination to and governed by the civil power. That was the 1776 Constitution of Pennsylvania. In the 1790, they modified that to say the free men of this Commonwealth shall be armed and disciplined for its defense. Those who conscientiously scruple to bear arms, in other words, those who are conscientious objectors, shall not be compelled to do so, but shall pay an equivalent for personal service. So basically, this was a draft, and they were saying no army during times of peace, which was Jefferson's position. But nowhere in any of those documents, and I've read Madison's notes, and I've read the Federalist Papers at least 2 or 3 times, nowhere in any of them does it say that people should have weapons in order to take on politicians.
Well, first off, if we're going to have weapons, if we're guaranteed to have weapons, and at the same time there should be a prohibition on a standing army during times of peace,
I agree.
Who would have that standing army during a time of peace? And the answer would be the government. And it at least implies that the purpose of the Second Amendment is to defend us against that government and potentially its standing army.
That's not what it says. It's the opposite of that the purpose of making sure that people have the right to be armed is so that they can defend the government, because the government is us. It's we the people. That was the whole idea of the founding of this country.
Okay, well, here's where I rely. And for what it's worth, the quote that 60 Minutes hammered over and over is taken out of context. You understand?
Oh, I
could sit back and I could do a little
not uncommon.
I could do a historical analysis, and I could say that there was a time when black people in this country were held as slaves because they were deemed to be, or because there's a grammatical inconsistency, but because they're deemed to be animals. And 60 Minutes could come back and say, well, Alfred Adask said that black people are animals. Well, yeah, technically, but that's not what I said. That was not the whole statement.
But just a minute ago, you just basically reaffirmed that you believe that the reason that people should have weapons in the United States is to take on our government.
Yes, that's fundamentally true. But
that's not out of context.
No. It is out of context in this regard. It's there to protect us against the government if the government becomes tyrannical or despotic. It is not a license to go shooting every cop you see and every judge and just say, hey, I got a Second Amendment right to plug anybody who looks at me funny.
But this is where I think a lot of And we have actually a history of revolution in this country, and we have a history of internal revolution, both the Revolutionary War and the Civil War. And the second one didn't turn out quite so well, but I know in terms of look at what was it, 600,000 people died in the Civil War. It was huge, whatever it was. But there are members of the sovereign citizen movement. I mean, you in South Carolina, there was a guy who killed 2 cops. In Texas, killed 3. In Alaska, killed 2. Aren't you concerned that you're awful close to lighting a fuse that we shouldn't be lighting?
I think people should be concerned about others who are awful close to lighting a fuse to suppress the truth.
What's the truth?
The truth is, there's a preamble to the Bill of Rights. You can look it up if you Google it. Google preamble to the Bill of Rights, and you'll get to the document. And it says, essentially, this is the document that was attached to the Bill of Rights when they were sent out to the states for ratification. And it says, in part, the conventions of a number of the states having at the time of their adopting the Constitution expressed a desire in order to prevent misconstruction or abuse of its powers. Now, they're talking about the powers of the Constitution.
Right.
That further declaratory and restrictive clauses should be added. These declaratory and restrictive clauses are the Bill of Rights.
Right. And I would refer you to Jefferson and Madison's correspondences on that. You're right. You're right. Okay. But what does that have to do with a modern day movement of people who say, this isn't our country? It seems to me like that's what you're saying.
Them is not my point. My point, I am on this program because I've been taken out of context. They quoted me as saying something that is historically correct, and they've said, oh my God, he's lighting a fuse. I'm not doing anything. I'm telling people this was the fundamental purpose of the Second Amendment as envisioned by the founders. It is to prevent misconstruction and abuse of the powers of the Constitution. There's only one group of people who can misconstrue and abuse the powers of the Constitution of the United States, and that's the officers and officials and employees of the government of the United States.
Okay, so practical question.
So the point is, the Second Amendment was there to prevent those abuses. What else could you do with it but shoot them?
All right, we'll agree to disagree on that point because I'm not going to convince you otherwise, and you not me. But just a practical question in the minute we have left: how do you take on an army that's got helicopters? And I mean, look at the U.S. military is pretty ferocious, particularly now that Bush did away with posse comitatus.
Yeah, but here's the point. The U.S. military has been bogged down in Iraq for, 7-8 years now?
Yeah.
Iraq is a nation about the size and population of Texas, and it's about all the military can handle. The truth of the matter is the military is outnumbered about 300 to 1 in this country. And if they wanted to come in and set up the military and all we have are bricks, if you can get 100 bricks thrown at somebody at the same time, I don't care if he's got a 50 caliber machine gun. He's going down.
But why not take the path of the Egyptians in Tahrir Square if you're upset with the government? Why not take the path of nonviolence, the path that Martin Luther King took, rather than I've got a gun, look out?
I'm not advocating that we shouldn't. For 28 years, I have been involved as a political activist. And what I've done throughout there is advocate we can solve the problem with paper. I'm not advocating we resort to violence, but I am observing that this was enshrined in the Constitution.
Fascinating conversation. Alfred Adask, Constitutional Sovereign Citizen Movement, Adask, ADASK.wordpress.com, and theamericanvoice.com. Thank you, sir.